thank you so much for taking the time. I know I'm really excited to talk to you about the topic of networking, and I know you do a lot of it and you're very good at it. So over to you.
So, seeing as we're all virtual and we don't really get to meet our audience in person, I just thought I'd spend a few minutes just to introduce myself so that, when the audience does someday, hopefully we do get to meet, we're already halfway there to making that connection. So I grew up on my family's grain farm and purebred beef operation at Wimborne, Alberta. And Wimborne's just a tiny little town southeast of Innisfail. And our family was actually comprised of 3 families that all farmed together. So we were lucky to not just have our parents. We had 2 sets of aunts and uncles, and our nana was also there on the farm. So there's 6 of us cousins, all very close in age. And we were, and I'd say we still are, like a very tiny little gang. And, growing up, my dad was the master of networking. And he knew, in our minds, absolutely everybody in the world. Going to a cattle show or going into a sale barn with him was truly torture, because he visited with everyone in the barn. And I guess history seems to rewrite itself, because my own daughter, who's 11 now, she says the exact same thing. No more talking, mommy. So besides raising and showing purebred Maine Anjou cattle, we also owned an export company, and we exported primarily beef and dairy genetics and live breeding cattle throughout the world. And our markets included the United States, Mexico, Colombia, China, and then eventually Russia and Kazakhstan. So really, if you think of all of the amazing hotspots of today, that's where we were doing business quite a while ago. But because of this business, I always had said that, whether I was in Arkansas or Alaska, we knew someone that could always help me get out of a bind. But that was just how I knew how big our own personal network was. And that came in very handy when both my brother and I attended university in Texas. So after graduating from Texas Tech University, I came home and eventually began working on our purebred operation full time. My plan was I was going to be working in town with that big high-paying job, that I was going to utilize my marketing degree. And when I wasn't busy running barrels and doing that, having some fun, I'd come home and help out on the ranch when I could schedule in that time. Now I occasionally find the time to barrel race, and I'm really not going to say that ranching is that high-paying job that I'd hoped I'd have. But because of this path, I've been pretty fortunate to have had some amazing experiences, and I've sat on the board of many beef industry organizations. I've been the first female chair for Alberta beef producers. I was on the board of the Canadian Cattlemen Association. I was on the interim board for ARDAR. And today I'm very proud to say that I'm the board chair for AFSC. So, when I think about networking, I kind of think the easiest way to describe networking was a few years ago, there was that awesome thing, the 7 degrees of separation to Kevin Bacon. And I'm pretty sure I can shorten that up to at least 3 degrees, maybe even 2, but that's just because of my network. The thing that I really would love, if I could just reduce the degrees of separation between me and Justin Timberlake. Now, just don't tell my husband that, because he knows it, and it's not really a secret, but just don't tell him that, okay? But for me, that would be the ultimate networking win. When I was first asked about giving a talk on networking, my first reaction was, oh, easy peasy. It's one of my most favorite things to do. I love to visit, I love to chat, and just mainly get to know people. One of my best friend's dads in university used to always tell us that she and I had never met a stranger. And I still believe that this is true, because to me, everyone is a connection that I just haven't met yet. Okay, so I realize not everybody finds it easy. When you're networking, you're putting yourself out to others. You're being vulnerable. You're revealing what you're good at and what you need. And that is a skill that I think takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of practice to hone. To some, it does come naturally, and some it takes practice, just like any other skill. And I'm going to tell you a little secret, and probably get a little personal here, and which is pretty rare, but I used to absolutely detest public speaking. And I had spent years in 4-H and beach arts, but it was a fear that was developed a long time ago. When I was in grade 6, I was bullied really badly at school. I had developed some stomach issues and would miss school because of this, and it was pretty rough. There was one week that the bullying just escalated every day. It was bad at the start of the week and just immeasurably was worse every single day. And I was in a little tiny school, so it's not a little easy way to get away from it. And finally, I was put in a situation that by lunchtime, I couldn't do it anymore. I called my parents and they came and picked me up. I honestly spent the next few days in bed. I wasn't going back to that school. It was pretty traumatic. So my parents were phenomenal and they advocated for me. And they forced the school division to let me transfer schools within the division. And then lucky me, all of those kids followed me to my new school the next year. But, you know, by then I'd had the time, the opportunity to develop a new set of friends and a really good set of friends, and was able to get through the next 6 years. But it taught me a lot. But eventually my parents had me enrolled in speech arts to work on my public speaking, and eventually put me in modeling lessons. And then I actually was working here in Alberta. And that was just to help increase my own self-confidence. I was pretty shy from that experience, and when making new friends, and I typically would prefer to hang out with my parents and the peers that I knew were safe. Putting myself out to new people was not something that I wanted to do. So eventually, I was high school rodeoing, and I made some amazing lifelong friends. These girls were the loud, crazy, boisterous, fun-loving ones, and they made me into exactly what they were. And it's funny that at the beginning, I didn't know what was happening, but I was building my own network, and I was only in grade 9. Kind of cool. When my older self thinks about it, like, you never think about what you're doing at the time, but back then, that was the first time I was building my own network. There's so many people today would never, ever believe that I was a shy person at all. And, you know, I owe a lot of it to those crazy girls. It's interesting today what that grade 6 experience taught me and how to deal with bullying. So what it taught me is I have to compartmentalize their issues. Those are their issues. They're not my issues. I realized I don't need to listen to the detractors. And I do everything that I can to hold my head high. I move on, I improve, and then I just go for higher goals. And you know what, those are skills that I've had to lean on throughout my life. And you know, even just a few years ago, I experienced it again. But because of that early experience, I realized I can move on, surround myself with my support network, which is another little bit of networking, and realize that detractors don't deserve a moment of my time. I've also learned that I have 2 types of networks. One is the people that I have as friends and acquaintances, and the second one is my support network. And those are the people that I rely on my darkest days. And from the hangover, I kind of call them my little wolf pack. You know, but both networks to me are so important because they do the same thing, but they also provide opportunities and growth within your network, and really let you look upon yourself. So today, I love meeting new people. I've built a network of people that I'm so proud of, and I love to share with all of my circles. My stepdaughters used to play an awesome game when we'd go to Costco, and they before we'd get to Costco, they'd guess how many people is ESM, evil stepmom, going to run into that she knows, and how many of them are going to be cousins. And my one stepdaughter, I was telling her I was doing this, and she's like, "Of course you're doing a talk on networking." And she laughs because she says, my favorite one was when we went to Disneyland. So we're in California. And of course, I ran into a friend of mine, ran into a friend that I know. And she's like, how do you go to Disneyland and just run into someone? And my husband always laughs. One time we were in Mexico and at an all-inclusive resort, and I'm in the pool playing with my daughter, and he walks by, and I'm visiting with a man that's in the pool with his kids, like his family's there too. And my husband looks, and he eventually, about a half an hour later, he's like, did you know that guy? And I said, well, actually, the funny thing is we have mutual family friends. He had a ranch in Mexico, and his family bought bulls that we had sold to Mexico. He's like, your world is so small. But, you know, like I said earlier, I believe networking is a skill. And there's no way that this dorky girl that was bullied terribly is able to network with it actually not being developed as a skill. And I thought to myself about the three things that what would my almost 50-year-old self give my 15-year-old self for some advice. Not that my 15-year-old self didn't already know everything, because I did. Just ask my mother, she'll tell you I knew it all. But when I think about developing a network for my 15-year-old self, my advice would be build that group of friends that make you feel good about yourself. If they make you laugh and they challenge you to do better and they share their knowledge with you, some of it maybe my mom didn't want me to know, but they're the ones that make you want to be in their inner circle. You know, those are the ones to gravitate to, the ones that make you feel good. You don't build that network overnight. It's going to take years, but you have to start somewhere. And those, you know, if you feel good when you're with those people, those are the ones you want to be with. And then don't be afraid to just be yourself. Anyone that ends up in that inner circle, that which is the center of your network, that's where you start networking from, is that inner circle. They will be there for you. And your network often will emulate you. So it's funny how I look at some of my inner circle and, you know, some of them are those shy girls and guys, and then some of them are the loud, boisterous ones. So I think it's kind of fun how when I look at my own network, they're kind of salt and peppered in there, a little of both of my personalities, I guess I'd say. And, you know, and then my third thing that I tell my 15-year-old self is look for your role models. And I can tell you exactly who my role models were back then. They probably didn't know it, but I looked really at a couple of ladies that I felt were really important to me to look up to. And one was the mom of one of my friends. She ran her family's ranch, and after losing her husband, raised her 3 kids. And she still found the time to contribute to the Alberta Cattle Commission back then. Like it was amazing that she could still do that. And I remember how my dad spoke of her with just such a reverence that she was able to manage it all. Another one is probably the classiest, most intelligent woman you will ever meet. She's been involved at all levels of the beef industry, and she's sought out for her knowledge and her careful thought. And, you know, it's pretty interesting to me as life would unfold. I've been able to follow in her footsteps and have sat on some of the same boards that she sat on back when I was a kid and even later on in life. And, you know, to me, she's never been held in high regard because she was a female, but because she was unapologetically herself and an incredibly well-spoken and intelligent individual. And there's so many more that as a young person that I look to, and never in my mind did I think I'd even come close to emulating them. These heroes of mine, they gave me my roadmap, and I didn't realize it at the time. Now, when I'm looking in that rear view mirror, that was the map I was looking at, I guess. So, you know, they always weren't front and center in my mind. I always wasn't thinking I want to be like her, you know, every step of the way, but obviously they were always there. My dad, he was amazing. He always spoke so highly of all of these ladies that I had looked to at that age. And I really always thought that they must truly be amazing for my dad to be just their biggest fan. As I grew up, I never considered the fact that friendships was building my own network. And now so many of these individuals that I'd called my heroes or think of as my heroes, I call them my friends. You know, it's been a phenomenal opportunity to grow within. So then now today, when I think of what I'm proud of for my almost 50-year-old self, what I'm proud of is when it comes to cultivating a network, I've kind of figured I could sum it all up into 3 key points. My number 1 is don't be afraid to put out into the world what you need and what you're looking for. Whether you're looking for a new job or an opportunity, let your network know that's what they're there for. They're going to be there not just for advice, but they'll help build those connections that you need. But the other side of that is be purposeful in your requests, that make sure you follow through and really utilize the requests when you need them. I'm pretty sure I could maybe put it out there that I really do want to meet Justin Timberlake, but I think. And then my number 2 is look for the friendly face. As still to this day, walking into a room full of strangers and not knowing if I'm actually going to know anybody in that crowd actually still makes my skin crawl. It's not something I enjoy. But what I've learned is I look for that friendly face. That face is part of a friend that I know I just haven't met yet. So, and then the opposite I always think is true too. I need to be the friendly face. I need to be the one that people gravitate to, that's my responsibility now too, that, you make sure that you include people, and then that's only going to help grow someone else's network. And that's, I think, a big part of our jobs as we progress throughout our careers and our lives, is to make sure that we're helping the next person improve, grow, and develop their own networks. And I always think when I go into a room, I never know who I'm going to meet. And, even yesterday I had a phenomenal experience getting to meet some of the people that I heard of as a kid, and got to go and meet them and introduce myself. And it was phenomenal. So, and then my number 3 point that I give for myself is bridges. And this one for me is my big point for me. Networks are essentially just a whole series of bridges, and how you can bridge yourself to someone else's bridge. And these bridges, they do take time, and they do take a lot of effort. You need to be an active participant in building that foundation of that bridge. The thing about bridges that I find is most are built their own way, but each one is built masterfully. That, you build that connection, and it's all based on your own experiences. But I love when I think about all of my little networks as my little bridges. But and occasionally, and I do hope very rarely, you just need to take a match to some. But some of those bridges are just not there to better you. And that's something that I've really learned as well. Set those ones on fire. But and you know what? I find it's okay if some of those connections don't work out. You just make sure you're calling the bad and keeping the goods. And you make sure that the ones that you're keeping are the ones that are positive, that make you feel better for yourself, but for the rest of your network too. The other thing I've learned, sometimes if the bridge isn't great, don't force it. Stop building it and put that effort somewhere else. That the ones that are worth the effort, those ones are easy and fun. That there are few things that are more fun than picking up the phone and just having a really easy conversation that you find enlightening, and that you're really engaging and you're learning off the other person. And it's fun building that relationship and building that network. And then number 4 for me, I guess I did say 3, but I'm going to go with my 3.1 then, is be a good listener. And when building a network, you need to remember what each person's skills, education, background, and personality are. So I will admit, I may not remember everyone's names the moment I see them. It'll get there, but it might take me a little bit, but it'll show up. But I remember points of conversations. I'll be visiting with somebody at the tractor dealership, and they'll say, well, I need to find this, or I'm looking for somebody that does this. And eventually I'll go, oh, right, I met somebody, and that's exactly what they're looking into. I might not remember that person's name. Eventually I'll get there. I'll make that circle. And then I love getting those 2 bridges connected. So, but that's a part of being a good listener. You need to really listen and focus as to what that other person is telling you that they're good at too. And I love picking up what other people's skills are. And I'm constantly thinking when I meet somebody new is, how am I someday going to connect this individual to somebody else down the road? I love it. So I guess, I've always felt that for me, I'm not building a network. What I'm building is relationships, for not just for myself, but I'm doing so for my daughter and for my family, my friends, and everyone else that I come in contact with. And, my view is if I can build a network that helps someone else, then to me, that's a success. I love making connections because I love being able to reach out to someone and hopefully solve a problem or help improve upon an issue. Yesterday like when I do attend an event, I'm not thinking today I'm going to wear my networking superhero cape. I go in there and I think, gosh, I wonder who I'm going to get to meet today. And it was fun. Like I said yesterday, I attended this political event, and there is actually at the event was a former agriculture minister, and my dad worked with her closely and spoke so highly of her. And to me, it was just that whole full circle. It was just to get to see her now. It was like, I know I met her when I was a kid, but now it was just, it came full circle. I couldn't wait to get in the car to call my mom and tell her about it. That was just one of those super cool experiences that I think totally encompasses a network. When I was looking and doing a little research and a little thinking of, you know, like any good speaker, we all have to have a quote, right? Don't we all have to find a quote? So the quote that I found was, networking is not just about connecting people. It's about connecting people with people, people with ideas, and people with opportunities. And I thought that's exactly what my goal always is. And so, yeah, I guess, you know, I always say if I'm doing these things on virtual, I always hope that someday I can meet whoever's watching in person. And if I am somewhere, I always ask, please come find me. And sometimes I'll be that friendly face.